after you hear how these so-called scientific men left us in this cell. And in the hands
Back at it again, everybody.
For me, it had been the best of times before it became the worst of times. The best.
We're gonna be drawing today, chilling.
At the facility. The worst because, well, I'll get to that. I was never the best student. I finished high school by the skin of my teeth, and my job prospects looked bleak. But I was lucky, I guess. Or at least I thought so at the time. You see, I have an uncle Siegfried who did some work for the government. I never actually knew what he did, just that it was secretive work. I used to imagine he was some sort of super spy, so you can imagine how excited I was when he found out I needed a job and he offered to help me out. I couldn't believe it. I always thought he hated me. I'd overheard him telling my parents that I was a no-good deadbeat, but now he'd had a change of heart and was willing to take me under his wing. What would I get to do?
Got myself some juice chat, and we got some SCP stuff to listen to.
Just you wait, he said. And that's how I found myself walking into a sprawling futuristic
I'm so sorry, Chat.
facility where they handed me a level 1 security clearance card with big bold letters that read janitor. But I was happy. Just the word security clearance made me feel important, and it beat flipping burgers. I pushed mops, turned off lights, fired up generators, clocked in and clocked out. But all that time they must have been watching me, grooming me, waiting for the day they could throw me to the wolves. I should have known. I've always been an expendable kind of guy. After a few years, I was called to an office, and there was a man in a plaid shirt and kind of a tweed jacket that professors wear. He asked me, "Do you have any idea about what we actually do here?" And to be honest, I didn't. I knew that there were many parts of the facility I couldn't enter. I imagined that down a maze of corridors were weapons being built, or prisoners being interrogated. But I had no idea about the anomalies. How could I? Before I was told anything, I had to sign a bunch of forms. There were so many I thought I'd get to find out who really killed JFK. And while they didn't come out and say it, what I inferred was that if I ever talk about what happens at the facility to someone outside the facility, well, let's just say it's not the kind of thing they'd spell out on a piece of paper, but it involves padded cells and rusty tools. I wasn't scared, though. I was part of something big, something secret, and I loved it. So I signed my life away with no hesitation. Soon after, I was introduced to my first anomaly, the safe class, of course. They took me to an observation room, and from that room I could see into another room with a sign on the wall that read SCP-067. I just stood there, waiting for something to happen, when in walked another guy in a white lab coat. "Welcome to your first anomaly," he said. "Is it okay if I hook you up to this heart monitor? We want to gauge your reaction to what you see." "All I can see," I told him, "is an empty room with a table and what looks like a pen on top of some papers." "Correct," he said, half smiling, as if I was some kind of idiot. "That's SCP-067. I thought about telling him that if I needed years of training before I could see a pen, that I probably should have taken that fast food job. Could have been a shift manager by now. Then they brought a young chimpanzee into the room, small enough to be harmless. One of the guys forced a pen into the scared chimp's hand and something strange happened. It started scribbling. Nonsense at first, but suddenly it was sketching and drawing faster and faster. I could catch glimpses of words and images. By the time they dragged it out, it was flailing around like it was possessed. "That pen has power," said the man in the lab coat. "A power whose source or origin we don't fully understand. That's why we're here. That's why you are here." One of the guys in the other room held the chimp's drawing up to the window. It was a perfect sketch of the Tower of London, intricate and brilliant. Above the sketch was the title, "Tower of London, Tudor Period, circa 1541. The year Margaret Pole, the Countess of Salisbury, lost her head on the chopping block." Underneath that, the chimp had written, "Pity. She was no traitor. Take it from me, I was there." They didn't need to look at the heart rate monitor to see that I was shocked. That was far from the only anomaly I'd come into contact with, and I must have been doing something right, because in time I went from level 1 to 2 to level 3 security clearance, and that's when they made me a containment specialist. I won't bore you with all the
Hey Scrooge,
details, but as
we're
you
just
can
vibing.
guess, I
How's
dealt
the
with
sound of
tons
the
anomalies.
SCP stuff?
A lot of my time was spent looking through small windows and cell doors, making sure that whatever was inside was still inside and still in one piece. Other times I worked with field agents when anomalies were brought in, a transition period that
Super
the
quiet.
freaks didn't much like. was one certain anomaly, though, that I was tasked to oversee on many occasions. I like to think of it as my pet. But in hindsight, I was its pet. This was SCP-173, something that was in what we call the Euclid class. A classification meaning that we don't fully understand it, but know it is very dangerous. We know it's intelligent, we know it's unpredictable, and we know it will kill. And for that reason, there's people tasked with containing it and keeping an eye on it at all times. At first glance, you wouldn't guess.
Now it's just mostly quiet. What do you mean? It's blaring so loud.
It's incredibly intelligent. In fact,
like on my audio mixer, I'm hitting probably about -15. This thing is hitting like -5. It is so loud. I can jump it up further.
We have to enter its cell twice a week for cleaning duties.
Is that better?
It leaves a disgusting, foul-smelling liquid on the floor. A reddish-brown substance that I can only describe as a mix of blood and waste products. Where that stuff comes from has remained a mystery since we first contained it in 1993. Going into the cell was always a 3-man job, because, and this is maybe the weirdest part about 173, it can't move if human eyes are watching it. That's why you need at least 2 people watching it at all times. If you were in the room watching 173 by yourself and blinked, you'd be dead before your eyes opened. We don't know how it moves that fast, but in that fraction of a second, your neck is snapped so hard it's almost like being decapitated. I've seen the videos to prove it. All it took was a sneeze. He wasn't even finished getting the rest of the
a lot of stuff around the house, but
his
I
partner
got
was
my
left lying on the ground.
2.5 hour stream, so.
His head twisted around the wrong direction. So, you can understand why we now require 3 men for any time we must enter 173's cell. Then, a few months ago, I was told that a long process would begin to train and re-educate some future Class Ds. Class Ds are mostly prisoners with lifelong sentences, or those we've taken from death row and given a new lease on life. We were apparently understaffed,
smiting
so
after,
why not
after all my
employ these
work?
men whose lives had
I got
pretty
a lot
much
of stuff
ended
to do.
anyway.
I gotta mow the
That
lawn
was the
today.
rationale, or
I'll
at least
probably
that's
be
what
later
they're
when
told
it's
me.
cooler, but
I was
gotta
told to
do
train them on
some
their new
cleaning
job,
and
mopping up
wash some
173's
clothes.
mess, so that me and the rest of the containment specialists could focus on more important tasks. They hadn't been through the training I had, seen what I had seen.
But yeah,
But
maybe we
after
can.
showing them the video of
Not
173 nearly
against it.
taking off a man's head, they were more than willing to follow the rules. They understood not to blink or turn away or sneeze, and that any lapse in focus could lead to a violent death. So I started to show them the ropes, how we move as a team into the cell and always keep the others informed on what we're doing. 173 was always sitting in the corner of a cell, no expression on that crude face. But when we walked in its cell, I got the feeling it knew something had changed. I felt almost as if it was communicating with me, but I couldn't tell what it was trying to say. And then, it happened. It was a Tuesday afternoon, 3 days from the last time we'd cleaned. As usual, 173 had covered the floor with that horrible liquid. We headed in to clean, my new team alert as always, and some of them cleaned while others kept their eyes focused on the thing in the corner. Things were going smoothly when we heard a noise I knew very well. It was the sound of the cell door locking. Someone must have screwed up. "Hey guys, we're locked in here," I shouted through the intercom. Nothing. "Guys, the damn door is locked." Nothing. I lost it a bit. "Open the door, will you?" Nothing. My team looked at me. The ones not on eye contact duty, that is, as if I should know what to do, hoping that this had happened before and that there was some kind of standard plan to deal with it. There wasn't. We were always observed when in the room, and I knew that a technician couldn't accidentally lock the door. It was impossible. There were protocols. Someone had done this on purpose. The 4 of us sat in the corner of the room as far from 173 as possible, our eyes locked on it. It didn't move an inch as usual, just stood, staring at the wall as it always did. We stayed awake through the night, talking a little, holding on to the slim hope that something had gone wrong. But as night turned to day again, we all began to lose hope. We weren't sent here to clean. We were a test. Totally expendable. Lab rats. But I wouldn't go down without a fight. We couldn't just stay up forever. That was a death sentence. I suggested that 2 of us stand, 1 sit and rest, and 1 get some sleep. We'd take shifts. A couple hours on, a couple hours off. Maybe we could show that we wouldn't give up. They'd have time to realize what they were doing was insane, call off the test, and come free us. We made it through a couple of shifts like this, and it seemed like we'd actually be able to make it another day or two when everything went wrong. It was my turn to sit and rest when I heard the worst possible noise. Snoring. The con next to me was sleeping quietly, so it must be one of the standers. I glanced over for just a split second and saw both of them, leaning against the cell wall, dozing. At the same time, I saw the flash. Crack, snap, pop. One after another, their necks were snapped. I'm not sure how it happened, but I was standing again, staring at 173, who was now in the corner. Dead bodies with their heads twisted around piled up in front of it. I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't stare at this thing forever. I felt myself giving up. I lowered my head to the ground and then finally broke my gaze, ready to die. And then, nothing happened. I slowly raised my head back up and there it was, its hideous face inches away from mine. It was then that I understood what we'd been containing, what we'd underestimated. I felt it again, like it was telling me something. It was telling me to close my eyes, to sleep. So I did. But as my eyes closed, I didn't see darkness. I saw 173, or something like it, but not in the cell. I saw it outside, in the world, standing over children sleeping in their beds, watching. I saw them hiding in the shadows, staring out at passers-by. Then I realized they weren't watching, waiting to pounce. No, they were hiding. My eyes popped open as the door opened and in rushed 6 security personnel. They took me outside, jabbed my leg with a syringe, injecting me with something as the world faded away. Incident report. Time and date redacted. Following the experimental forced interaction with Euclid class anomaly SCP-173. Subject has ceased responding to external stimuli and appears to have taken on the traits and behaviors of the anomaly. Subject now spends entire day sitting in corner of cell staring at the wall. Staff are advised to proceed with caution when dealing with subject, as the only behavior they engage in is an attempt to strangle anyone who enters the cell. No treatments have shown any effectiveness, and subject will unfortunately require incarceration, likely forever. Working at the SCP Foundation might just be the most exciting job a person can ask for. And by exciting, we mean that if you work as an SCP field operative, researcher, or mobile task force member, you're much more likely to die a horrific death.
Here's my thing
with
a
plumber. But at least you get.
Here's my thing with the statue, right? The thing where, like, if you look at it, it doesn't move, and if you don't look at it, it does move, right? Here's my thing with it, right? I understand they try and find uses for the SCPs or something that they can do to exploit or try and figure out where they come from. But what the fuck do you learn or could you gain from thing that just kills you when you don't look at it, right? My question is, for it, why don't they just put it in a large concrete box and drop it into the ocean? Concrete, layer of, like, I don't know, titanium or tungsten or something. Concrete, tungsten, concrete, and then just drop it in the ocean. Drop it into the Mariana Trench. And so let it just chill there, right? Let it just do whatever it wants to do. Because very obviously, there is no... Drop it into an enemy base, efficient warfare. How do you get it back, though? How do you get it back? Because consider, like, you're going to come in after it's got, like, 100% fatality rate. Like, everyone in the base is dead, right? It's hiding. It's gone. It's in the vents. How are you going to get away from it? Because you're not only on a time crunch, right? Because obviously... It's efficient, it's not fast, right? It's not fast in killing everybody at once, because there's going to be people looking at it, people are going to try and figure out how to beat it, blah, blah, blah. They're called reinforcements. You're not going to have time to do it. I don't think it's a very efficient weapon to use in warfare, right? I think it would just be better just sending it to the bottom of the trench. Send it to the trench. Put it in the trenches where we put all the terrible things. Where I drop my ex-wife. But yeah, I just don't see what the use of it is. Like communist spiders. We drop communist spiders into an enemy base, easy win. Like they bore them to death and they die. If you drop the statue into the base, it kills everybody, then it kills everybody we go to send after it. Right? I feel like it's still so much of a loss on whoever drops the statue in. Right? Communist spiders are, in fact, a great SCP, though. I think that's a miracle of writing.
You get the honor of proudly saying that you're the first line of defense between the normal world and
What
the
about
terrifying
cameras?
domain.
I think it can move on cameras. Hold on. And SCP-173 move on camera. Yeah, SCP can move canonically when on camera. So no, cameras will not work. Cameras will not work on SCP-173. So my point's even more proven. How do you get it back efficiently without just losing the same amount of people?
Of the anomalous. Well, unless you're one of the IT guys. Then your work life is likely as tedious and uneventful as the computer tech guy working on the Geek Squad. But nothing is ever normal when it comes to the SCP Foundation, where even the person whose job is helping others—
Oh, this is the weird one.
It isn't easy to work for the SCP Foundation. Not only is the job dangerous, you could be eaten by a giant immortal lizard or turned into organic furniture inside the world's scariest living room, but it's also insanely complicated. How do you make sense of the nonsensical? What's the definition of strange
Maybe it can
when
be
your
used as a
career
last-ditch
is
effort weapon
securing,
or something?
containing, and protecting anomalous
I
objects
could see it
and
as a
entities,
nuclear option.
rather than a single object, location, or being?
I could agree with the nuclear
SCP-001
option,
is a
right?
cluster
Where
of
you're
over
just like
30 different
raise
proposals
the
for
earth, take
potential
everyone down
candidates
with you.
for the prestigious 001 spot. Some believe there's a true 001 hidden in this group, and the rest are decoys. Others think that these are all just SCPs cataloged prior to the introduction of the current classification system. Some even think that all of the proposals have a valid claim to the SCP-001 throne. We're not here to make a final judgment. Instead, we're going to take you on
I
a
would feel like
lightning
this would
round
be like,
crash
you know,
course
if they
through 31
got
of the
into some place you didn't want them to, and you
proposals.
know you're gonna
If you'd
lose,
like
and
a
you're just like,
more
fuck it, let them
in-depth
out.
take on any of these
Right?
SCPs, let us know in the comments. But for now, there's no more time to waste. After all, we got a lot to cover. Let's go.
I think they got
Number
a couple
31,
of those.
the sheaf of papers. This seemingly innocent stack of paper is actually one of the most mysterious and feared items under the Foundation's lock and key. While it appears to be a simple confidential report, every time the papers are read, it details the appearance of a new SCP that will inevitably be discovered soon after. The question is whether the sheaf of papers is warning us about these entities or creating them itself. Number 30, the prototype. This account details the capture of an incredibly strange cycloptic creature that emits massive amounts of radiation and can create micro-singularities. The writing of this creature's file is so basic, unformatted, and unredacted that it's clear that the being was one of our earlier creatures secured by the organization. Interestingly, it was during the capture of this creature that Dr. Keter was killed, inspiring the creation of the infamous Keter class in his honor. Number 29, the Gate Guardian. This huge, multi-winged, sword-wielding, biblical energy being may have been the impetus for the founding of the SCP Foundation. This being remains largely static, guarding the intersection of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Its flaming sword, which is believed to be as hot as the sun, can cleave any aggressor out of existence at the atomic level. When the founder of the SCP Foundation first encountered the Gate Guardian, they heard one word echoing through their mind: prepare. And the rest is history. Number 28, the Lock. This onyx gemstone and the incredibly complex lock attached to it are still a mystery. To this day, all attempts to open it have failed. Personally, we think that's probably for the best. Number 27, the Factory. As the name suggests, this SCP is literally a factory founded by a pagan and a devil worshipper. While it's believed that the factory could create just about anything, its specialty was creating a number of SCPs we know and fear today. Pre-Foundation forces were able to disable the factory, but not without sustaining their own heavy losses. Number 26, the Spiral Path. This is a normal-appearing gravel pathway that, when traveled clockwise, appears completely normal. However, when traveled counterclockwise, the path goes uphill forever, in defiance of all laws in physics. This simple anomaly opened a Pandora's box of rampant anomaly creation, leading to a number of the deadly SCPs we know today. Number 25, the Legacy. This SCP is a collection of seemingly random objects, including a diary from a person claiming to be from another reality, attempting to halt a trans-dimensional corruption that they themselves created. The diary claims to have a solution to this corruption, but the solution has not yet been found. Number 24, the Database. In one of the strangest twists on the format, this SCP is actually the various authors of the SCP Wiki who are somehow leaking top-secret information to the public. Number 23, the Foundation. This SCP, first discovered by the FBI, is an anomalous high school building that experiences shifting internal geometry and sometimes manifests hostile humanoids within. Number 22, 36. One of the rare benevolent SCPs, the 36 are humans with a truly remarkable ability. They can dampen or even neutralize any SCP they come into contact with. Though it's implied that the 36 may have the power to save the world, every time one of them dies, a supernatural calamity occurs, often leaving hundreds of innocents dead. Number 21, Keter Duty. This refers to a containment facility largely filled with Keter-class SCPs, whose presence around each other creates a kind of mutually assured cancellation. If one of these SCPs breaches containment, that's bad news. But if all of them do, it'll produce a bubble of reality distortion that will fundamentally alter reality as we know it. For all we know, it may have even happened already. Number 20, Ouroboros. This is a proposal that's formed of 4 sub-proposals. Remember what we said about complicated? These sub-proposals include the children, 9 anomalous kids who emit radiation and have destructive potential when together, the broken god, aka Mechane, the god of metal, intelligence, and machines, Atonement, a researcher turned into a humanoid singularity with the power to destroy whole realities, and The Way It Ends, which isn't technically an SCP, but the tales of the Chaos Insurgency's quest to eliminate all the members of the Foundation's O5 Council. Number 19, a record. This is an SCP file slot that is itself an SCP. Whatever is written into this slot becomes true, and one ambitious researcher attempted to use this power to make herself into a kind of all-powerful god. Number 18, Past and Future. These SCPs are
So why don't you just use that to win?
That despise humanity
Hold on,
and are
that is
apparently
such
the
a
source of all anomalous phenomena, even making already dangerous SCPs deadlier.
So they have a book, they have something that just goes, yeah, I win. It's the retcon device. That, like, you... That's just crazy. Hold on. Because again, they do, okay, I will say, they preface this section of this with, some of these might just be ploys to fuck with people because the real SCP-001 is really bad, right? They preface that, I'll say that. But if this is real, if this book thing is real, that you just write and change realities, the retcon device, they have no right to fucking complain about any SCP ever to ever exist at any point in time, because they can just say goodbye and turn it off. Like, that is the biggest fuck you, right? That is the biggest Uno reverse fuck you, no one cares item. I don't understand how you lose with that. I really don't understand how you lose with that. Cool concept, though.
Than before. Much
Terrible
like the
writing device.
database, those pesky SCP wiki writers might have something to do with this. Number 17, the Consensus. This SCP refers to a reality restructuring event caused by an occult war in a previous reality. That's right, this SCP already won, and we're living in its new reality. The only people who remember the world as it once was are 13 people who now form the O5 Council, and not all of them are telling the truth about what they know. Number 16, When Day Breaks. This proposal details a potentially world-ending SCP phenomenon wherein the sun becomes hostile and begins to melt all living beings into a living wax-like substance. Number 15, God's Blind Spot. This is an anomalous area referred to as Facility T, in which nobody can die. This anomaly dates back to the biblical ages of Moses and is believed to have originated from the literal blessing of the Abrahamic God. It's through a covenant with this god that the Foundation is able to make limited use of this death-free area. Number 14, Normalcy. Ever wonder what the Foundation's definition of anomalous is? Exactly. It all comes from this proposal, which is a document shared among the O5 Council that gives solid definitions to the fundamental laws of reality. If something breaks these laws, that's an anomaly.
Hey, welcome to the stream.
And then
We're
it
listening to
becomes the
SCP and doing
Foundation's
drawings.
business. Number 13, The World at Large. As the title suggests, this SCP is our home planet Earth and its ability to support life. It's believed that these qualities were planted on Earth in our reality by another dimension's SCP Foundation, hoping to continue human life after some terrible calamity in its own dimension.
Wait.
Number 12,
Wait.
Dead Men. This SCP was an 80.
Wait. So again, prefacing if this is true, are they trying to say that we're just the backup plan, or this reality is a backup plan for another SCP Foundation in another reality? This is getting crazy. Dude, they got some crazy fucking backup plans on backup plans on backup plans, man. Holy shit.
4-year-old man whose body, when damaged and mutilated, can affect the very processes of human death at large. Before his own death, he was used as a dangerous pawn in a civil war between O5 Command and the SCP Foundation Ethics Committee. Yeah, we were surprised to hear they had an ethics committee too. Number 11. The World's Gone Beautiful. This SCP describes an anomalous event that will take place just before the apocalypse, in which flowers will grow all over the world and everyone will be briefly at peace before their destruction 24 hours later. Number 10. The Scarlet King. This is an extremely powerful, extremely malevolent, extremely extra-dimensional being. Its worshippers attempted to summon him in the ritual that created SCP-231, and it's believed that he will...
Yeah, some of these are wild. Some of these are wild to fall asleep to. Yo, this one crawls into your asshole when you sleep and expands and kills you. What? What? And this one just kills everyone as soon as you think of it. Huh?
Finally enter our reality crazy. After the death of SCP-231-7. You better hope you're already dead by then. Number 9. A simple toy maker, aka Dr. Wondertainment. This is a reality bender who appears to be a normal human male but has the ability to create other anomalous objects, a number of which are now cataloged SCPs. Number 8. Story of Your Life. This is another anomalous document that has the ability to warp reality, but only when the writing contained within conforms to a narrative structure. Number 7. A Good Boy. This is another anomalous entity created accidentally by the Foundation itself. A neural network was fed information on other anomalous entities in order to help the Foundation come up with better containment and neutralization procedures. Problem was, the computer got way too eager with the neutralization part. Number 6. Project Palisade. This is another anomaly created by the Foundation, this time to combat a potentially reality-destroying entity known as the Worm. The Foundation created a number of alternate realities as shields, but it's possible that this just made the worm stronger. Number 5. O5-13. The final member of the O5 Council, who ironically may not even be anomalous. However, seeing as all the other members of the O5 Council are anomalous, O5-13's lack of anomalous properties is therefore anomalous. Like we told you earlier, it's complicated. Number 4. Fishhook. This is less an actual SCP and more about the difficult process of ascertaining the true 001, if such a thing is possible. The very concept of SCP-001 is to some degree an anomalous idea. Number 3. The Sky Above the Port. Another particularly bizarre SCP regarding the permanent threat of a ZK-class reality failure. How is such a calamitous event prevented? By keeping a strange entity in a cave eternally entertained. The current proposed solution is keeping the entity entertained by allowing it to read its own eternally recursive Foundation file entry. Number 2. The Solution. Another one of the most powerful anomalous items in the Foundation's control. The Solution is a machine designed with the capability of fully collapsing reality into an event of end-of-world SCP containment breach, and then finally rebuilding reality to suit a given narrative. However, things took a cosmically dangerous turn when the machine began to act on its own. When the Foundation tried to reboot the machine, it broke and recreated reality with incomplete data. This is the world we exist in now, with no knowledge of what came before, and how it differed from the world we experience today. Finally, number 1, the Tendelos Trinity. Put very simply,
okay, once again, they prefaced with this section that SCP-001, no one knows what it is, really, so they have like 30 different types, like versions of it to fuck with people, because SCP-001 is super powerful, right? They went from, oh, this dude just kind of hurts you really bad when you hurt him, to this thing made reality. To this thing just made us in reality because it got a little silly one day. And then we have this creature in some sort of cave, little fucking Billy Joe James, we call him. He's a big little bean, and he just controls reality if we don't put on we don't put on show tunes for him. They, like, whoever in this O5 council is thinking of these things needs to like get off the fucking Percocets or whatever crazy fucking drugs they're on, because some of these are wild.
Tendelos
some of these
Trinity
like
represents
red herrings
3
are
timelines
wild.
that converge and feed back in on themselves. Even trying to summarize this one is near impossible, as its strangeness and complexity resists all reduction. You can hunt down the Tendelos Trinity yourself and hope to unpack its secrets, but don't say we didn't warn you.
Tenderloin?
So
Seriously?
that's SCP-001. Is it one of them, all of them, or even none of them? Perhaps that's a question best
I
left
hope
up to
it's
the Foundation,
some of them.
or maybe the simple answer is that you're just not meant to know. We're talking about information so privileged here that it's protected by a memetic kill agent that'll quite literally make you drop dead if you view the files without proper authorization. You do have proper authorization, right?
November 26, 2014. A plot of federal land in the Midwestern United States appears to be completely uninhabited. But to those in the know, this is actually the location of Biological Research Area 12, a large SCP Foundation facility that houses and experiments on live biological entities and hazardous tissue samples. Already, it was proving to be a challenging day for the personnel stationed at Area 12, due to what seemed like a freak technical glitch. They were dealing with a system failure and a large-scale containment breach. The deadly bladed petals of SCP-143 were drifting through the air. The acidic SCP-153 roundworms were breeding. SCP-811 was running wild, and a number of amnesia.
Yeah, we breed roundworms here. That's all. That's what our facility is all about, is roundworms. What do we do with them? We just breed them, put them in a big vat in the back. That's what we do. Well, that's what we do here at Site-07. Yep, it's honest work, but someone's got to breed all these roundworms and put them in the vat. But why do you make them? Now you're asking all the wrong questions. I'm gonna have you executed now. It's so stupid.
Inducing SCP-939 creatures had escaped their pen.
We're gonna kill you
In
now.
short, it was a total disaster. Complete paranormal pandemonium. And things were about to get so much worse, as the sounds of whirring helicopter blades and the rumbling engines of heavy military vehicles approached. The embattled staff were relieved that Mobile Task Force reinforcements were arriving so quickly. After all, Area 12 was relatively isolated, and they'd only just put in a call for help. On-site security staff were being overwhelmed in the chaos of the containment breach, and they needed the big guns if they wanted to get things under control before it was too late. What they didn't know as the vehicles surrounded their facilities is that it was already far too late for most of them. Soon, heavily armed troops in protective tactical gear were storming the facility. As they entered, terrified staff members ran towards them for protection, and then stopped in their tracks. These soldiers didn't bear the insignia of the SCP Foundation, or any known Mobile Task Force, nor did they bear the symbols of the Global Occult Coalition. This was something different altogether. Some of the Foundation personnel began to beg for assistance anyway, seeing it as an any port in the storm situation. They realized too late that this group wasn't here to save them, and met their end in a hail of bullets from the soldiers' assault rifles.
Best viewers on stream,
When
boo.
the actual Mobile Task
Best
Force
bands on
finally
my
did
chat.
arrive,
Don't ever
they
advertise again.
witnessed a horrifying sight. Most of the
Robots,
on-site
man.
Foundation personnel had been shot dead, and there were no trace of the culprits. Even worse, several of the SCP-939 creatures were missing. These are the predatory pack-hunting creatures that produce amnestic chemicals to lure and disorient their prey. These anomalies are dangerous enough on
Man.
their own, but in the hands of someone who really knew how to use them, these living amnestic factories could pose an extremely serious threat. The Mobile Task Force members knew what they were dealing with here. Only one group would have the nerve to perform a high-casualty heist on an SCP Foundation facility during a containment breach: the Chaos Insurgency. The Mobile Task Force reported the incident back to command and already knew what their next mission would be: track down the Insurgency Splinter Cell and get the 939s back. This mission would have the absolute highest stakes, and if they weren't successful, there was no limit to the damage the Chaos Insurgency could do with a creature as dangerous as SCP-939 under their control. But who exactly are the Chaos Insurgency? What do they want? And why are they stealing anomalies? The Chaos Insurgency is one of the most mysterious and clandestine of the groups that fight against the SCP Foundation. They are different from the Global Occult Coalition, a United Nations offshoot created after the Seventh Occult War, whose mission is to destroy rather than try to contain anomalies. The
They
Serpent's
seem
Hand
like
is
they
on
know
the
what they're
opposite end
doing.
of the spectrum.
Hold on.
This group
So you're saying that this sanctioned government, that the United fucking Nations created the occult front, whatever, the occult people, And the SCP Foundation are like, oh, we can't do that. We can't destroy the SCPs. We have the silly statue that moves when you don't look at it and snaps your neck, and it's so silly. Like, just fucking destroy it. Why do you guys want to keep them locked up? These guys are the good guys. These guys are the better guys. I don't know why the SCP Foundation's gotta be so stupid. But we have the fucking silly virus that turns you into a fish with 3 eyes. It's like, what the fuck? Like, the SCP Foundation are stupid. They're just misunderstood. No. These SCPs are misunderstood. I can fix them. I walk into the SCP-173's containment chamber and I stroke his shithole. The thing where he shits out of his mouth. And I look at him and I look into his eyes and I blink and then I die because he rips my fucking head off. No, the occult people are the ones who are the good people. I don't know why the occult people are being shit on right now.
Drives for the normalization of the anomalous.
This is slander.
And the destruction of the webs of secrecy that keep the anomalous and consensus reality separate. Both the GOC and the Serpent's Hand have clear ideals and mission statements. But the Chaos Insurgency is less forthcoming about their beliefs and convictions. Something we know for sure about the Chaos Insurgency, though, is that they view anomalies as tools to be utilized rather than unpredictable elements to be contained, studied, or neutralized. To this end, they do whatever it takes to obtain more anomalies of their own, whether it's ruthlessly seeking out anomalies in the wild or taking them from the Foundation with coordinated strikes during moments of weakness. Though they lack the support and resources of organizations like the Foundation and the GOC, the Chaos Insurgency more than makes up for it in devotion to their cause, their unpredictability.
So Mr. SCP-173, I see you like to snap people's necks when they're not looking. Is this something to do with your father not paying attention to you enough? Yes, please. Hold on, I must grab my glasses. Dead. He looked away for a second. Dead. Ripped his head off. That's what happened. But maybe you're right. Maybe just enough. We throw enough therapists at him. Maybe
it's difficult to separate the facts from the rumors when it comes to the Chaos Insurgency. Some believe that, to compensate for their rejection by the United Nations as an official group dealing with anomalous incidents, they instead receive support from certain dictatorships in the developing world. Funded by the blood money of various warlords, they carry out their research on political prisoners and captured refugees provided by their murderous allies. They're also believed to illegally deal both weapons and intelligence, helping the dictators who fund them remain in power and subjugate their own people. The Foundation has been able to gather some intel about the Chaos Insurgency's organizational structure, which looks like a strange mirror of their own. It's led by the mysterious Delta Command, headed by a figure known only as the Engineer. Gamma-class personnel execute the orders of Delta Command using the lesser Beta-class personnel as field operators. And finally, there is Alpha-class. They're typically forced into conscription from the states occupied by the Insurgency and serve...
That the Chaos Insurgency, right? They're gonna come in here. Guns ablaze. They're gonna come in here. And they're gonna attempt to capture and reclaim... Where the fuck did you go? There it is. They're going to attempt to capture Blurt. They're going to attempt to grab him, take him from the facility. I don't know why Blurp is inside of the facility in the first place. Look at him. He's such a nice little fella. Before all we know, this guy, as soon as you touch him, as soon as you say hi to him, he fucking explodes and kills everybody. But they're going to come and get him and use him for nefarious purposes on refugees and other other people being held against their will. They're going to grab Blurp. These guys are terrible. Chaos Insurgency, evil people. Look at him. Look at Blurp. He's like so happy, so nice. And I can't believe they'd use him for such nefarious purposes. I mean, even though Blurp is in fact a nuclear warhead in disguise, and he just kills everything that it touches him. I can't believe that they're going to do this to Blurp. It's just insane to me. Crazy.
As cannon fodder for the group as they track down as many anomalies
suspiciously
as they can.
happy
and the Insurgency is believed to possess a number of powerful
what's
anomalies
behind those
already.
happy looking eyes?
These include the Bell of Entropy, an object that can cause a variety of destructive effects depending on where it is struck, and the Staff of Hermes. an anomalous object capable of warping the physical and chemical properties of any matter it touches. The Chaos Insurgency is only growing more powerful as they continue their pursuit of money and power with a legion of militarized anomalies. Their goal?
Gonna militarize
Total world
Blurb?
domination. Other accounts are a little more charitable to the beliefs and causes of the Chaos Insurgency. They've been described as a rebellion against the ruthless early days of the SCP Foundation, when they had a more violent, take-no-prisoners attitude. This rumor has likely been disseminated by the Chaos Insurgency themselves, though, as it paints them in the most positive and righteous light. In reality, the truth, as is often the case, is somewhere in the middle. Danger often comes from within, and the Chaos Insurgency is no exception. One constant in all interpretations of the origin of the Chaos Insurgency is that its members are rogue elements of the SCP Foundation, and it's commonly believed that they have countless moles still deep in the organization today. However, one well-kept secret among the upper echelons of the Foundation is that the creation of the Chaos Insurgency is a lot less unknown than they'd like you to think. Yes, danger really does often come from within. When researching the origins of the Chaos Insurgency, you'll likely see two dates pop up again and again, 1924 and 1948. According to the official line from the SCP Foundation, 1924 was the date of the Chaos Insurgency's defection, and 1948 marked the first series of violent raids that the Chaos Insurgency led against the Foundation. But these are only half-truths. While both dates are indeed significant in the story of the Chaos Insurgency, it's for entirely different reasons. 1924 was the date when the Chaos Insurgency, known at the time simply as the Insurgency, was created by the O5 Council. Why would the SCP Foundation?
I don't know exactly what's going on anymore. I don't know, there's some deep state bullshit that's happening.
You have to understand that at the time, the Insurgency served a very different purpose. They were intended to be a black ops group for the O5 Council, capable of doing their dirty work off the books and out of sight of the rest of the Foundation, especially its ethics.
What I can assume is that what they're trying to poke at is the fact that Chaos Insurgency in the grand ethos was actually like the Psycho Black Ops group that did the dirty work that the SCP Foundation couldn't do because they were more public back then or something. But then they realized giving guns to psychopaths wasn't a good idea, so now they're just psychos with guns going around militarizing Blurb. I'm assuming SCP gets kind of complicated when you're talking about this, huh?
Often
Because, I don't know, the government-sanctioned group that literally is just made by the governments of the world to destroy anomalies is the bad guy. I don't know why SCP Foundation exists at this point. Who the fuck are they? Who cares? Take them down.
With O5 Command. Their members were recruited from Mobile Task Force Alpha 1, also known as the Red Right Hand, a highly secretive MTF in the pocket of the O5. For 24 years, they did the O5's dirty work while shielding the Foundation's international reputation from any potential fallout. They were faithful soldiers, until they found themselves a new master. The Engine, a mysterious anomalous object that began to invade and infect the minds of the Insurgency. The group's human leader, the previously mentioned Engineer, is merely a puppet of the Engine, its human mouthpiece. While the full extent of the Engine's plans remains mysterious to even members of the Chaos Insurgency, the Engine has been passing down orders ever since. In 1948, the Insurgency fully defected, becoming the Chaos Insurgency.
So you'll tell me AI controls the Chaos Insurgency? I knew AI would take over.
To assassinations, to threats of damaging the illusion of consensus reality with their reckless behavior. And now, thanks to their acquisition of SCP-939, they could get started on Amnestics production too. Thankfully for the Foundation, they had prepared for 939's getting out into the world, and all of the creatures housed at Area 12 had been implanted with subdermal trackers. Several mobile task forces were immediately dispatched to home in on the signal, take out the insurgents, and secure the 939s once more. They tracked the signal to a warehouse in the Badlands of New Mexico, where task force members stormed in and began a tense firefight
10 hours by following you. Thanks for the follow.
All Gamma and Beta class,
Thank
of
you.
course. The Delta classes, just like O5s, are notoriously slippery. They emerge like tactical ghosts from behind boxes and exposed pipes, advancing and firing with no regard for their own lives and safety. Slaves to the Engine. It wasn't like battling.
Just tell me more about the silly SCPs. Alright, we're listening to SCP-5000 right here.
SCP-5000. Gunshots echo down the concrete hallway of Site-22. Screams are the only
I don't
thing
care about
that
the whole like
escape each
internal
room.
political,
A team of men in
geopolitical
all
thing that
black
they're going
combat
on
gear
there.
and
I just want to hear about
masks
silly
move from one
SCPs.
section of the complex to
Oh,
the
boy.
next. Pietro Wilson hides in his office, listening to the cries for mercy of his colleagues. He shakes uncontrollably with fear. Who are they? He thinks. Why are they killing everyone? And how did they find us? Moments earlier, Pietro Wilson had been in the canteen eating dinner with other staff members. A group of heavily armed men entered the room. They stood silently surveying the area. One of the scientists stood up and asked if they could assist them. That's when the carnage started. One of the masked men raised his rifle and shot the scientist in the head. Chaos broke out as the other mercenaries raised their weapons and began firing. Bullets flew everywhere, and Pietro was lucky not to be struck or trampled as he escaped out the back door of the cafeteria. He ran to his office, slammed the door shut, and hid under his desk. Now he sits on the floor, with his legs pulled
You're
up
kind
to
of a
his
pussy,
chest,
dude.
shaking
Be honest with you.
uncontrollably. After a couple of minutes, he manages to take a deep breath and slows his heart rate. He regains control of his body, but is still filled with fear and adrenaline. Pietro crawls on his belly to his office door. He reaches up and pulls down on the handle. There's a slight click as the latch releases. He opens the door just a crack and peers out into the hallway. The flickering emergency lights illuminate the corridor for a few seconds at a time before plunging it back into darkness. There is no one in sight, but from around the corner, flashes of light from machine gun fire flickers down the hall. The screams of the workers at Site-22 are silenced. Pietro takes a deep breath and pushes the door open further. He crawls out of his office and starts moving away from the violence. Unfortunately, to get away from the
Dude, this okay. I'm not gonna
he must
lie.
go
This
deeper
episode's
into the
beans. Let's find a
bowels of-
different one. Find a different one. Hold on. Kind of beans, man. I just want to learn about the silly SCPs. I don't want to. What is this? SCP-096 versus One Punch Man. What the fuck? I just want to listen to the stories, man. Disturbing SCPs humanity was never meant to discover. That's good. Let's do yeah, let's do that one. Unless they have a different one. What else? This one ain't bad. SCP files that refuse to be forgotten. Let's listen to this one.
and spitting out seeds echo through space forever and onward. And for most of our earthly hours consumed by appetite, it has been documented to be a lopsided relationship between these two things, man and apple. Man getting the sweet taste and abundant nutrients, apples getting nothing but pain and stomach acids. But this story is not found in our history. Buried in the lawful patterns of predator and prey, we stumble upon an irregularity, an inversion, an instance of apples biting back. SCP-4608, also known as Appleseed, was a 60-acre apple orchard containing over 22,000 trees.
Are the apples fucking
located
gonna
just
fight
on the
back?
outskirts of Milan, Indiana. A town so small it strains your eyes as you squint to find it with a microscope, hovering just over a map. And to see what was actually happening within the curious fringes of society took even greater exploration, not just of the eyes but also of the mind. Because what would eventually be seen would not so easily be comprehended. Physical senses are just the surface, and we need to go deeper. Our story begins with a great logging company looking to take ownership of the most fertile land they could find in the Great Lakes region. Ideally land that overproduces conifer growth so that the return on their investment would be plentiful and perpetual. These lumberjacked men knew what they wanted. Beneath their
men.
red flannel shirts and muddy
love
boots was a
jacking men.
deep intelligence and understanding of nature. Their process of assessing the land's value was meticulously calculated. They knew the soil, both by the experience of their calloused hands and the literature of their study. They tracked various bird species migration patterns in the area to assess what kind of seeds they'd be carrying and contributing to soil by way of their stool. They understood the local laws relating to clear-cutting and conservation and how both would affect their profit margins. This is all to say, it wasn't just a speculative purchase. This was planned through and through and dwelled on. And yet, even then, with scrupulous eyes and careful crew, they missed the warning signs. SCP-4608 checked all their boxes, and then some. What could go wrong? And so they acquired the land, unwittingly purchasing the peril that came with it. On the first day of owning the property, one crew member noticed the branches did not sway in the same direction as the wind blew. He noticed the leaves didn't float down in agreement with their feathery weight, but rather crashed to the soil like two-dimensional anvils and grand pianos. The roots were not ones you simply trip over. Instead, it seemed as if they stuck their leg out to trip you. When birds perched themselves up high and sang their songs, their cadence carried all the eeriness of an SOS. With all this said, he was happy to have acquired the land, and having already picked up and moved his family from the West Coast to now live and work out in Milan, Indiana, he decided it was best to look past his concerns. After all, it was the first day on the new site, and excitement was in the air, but with it also an amorphous, anxious energy. During the first logging expedition within SCP-4608, this same member of the crew hiked the grounds to better familiarize himself with the environment he'd be working on, hoping that if he managed the land properly and extracted the lumber as efficiently as his late father did, he would be able to help build the business and give his children the life he always promised them. He brought with him his notepad and took detailed records of his surroundings. He figured to achieve his goals and sustain long-term yields,
Shut the fuck
he'd
up.
have
Tell
to
us what the
cooperate
apples.
with his environment, but he never questioned if his environment wanted to cooperate with him. Would this question have changed the course of action, or is brooding on the preference of plants an empty gesture, best left for hippies at Woodstock? Either way, the orchard let it be known how it felt about a collaboration when hours later, the man was found dead. It was first believed by his coworkers to be a result of a safety equipment malfunction. Maybe it was a simple matter of thinking the skidder was in park when it was really in neutral. Maybe the knuckle boom loader went on the fritz how it does when the humidity ramps up. Maybe machinery really was to blame, in which case you call it a fluke and ask no more. After all, there's only so many questions you can ask a robot. But initial belief is a fickle thing, and it wasn't long until first impressions were called into question by the courts of critical thinking. The questions of the crew, however, only rang briefly, because shortly after the first death fell a sequence of others. In a matter of days, all of the remaining crew members were declared dead or missing, a word reserved for
At what point do you
search
just take
parties
people
still
out of
clinging
there?
to hope, a hot potato they would have been wise to abandon. For while it was hope that brought these search parties together, it was hope that sent them off, never to be seen again. The Foundation was then alerted to the occurrences surrounding SCP-4608 by police reports accompanied by a photograph of an SCP-4608-1, an organism consisting of unidentified plant-like muscular structures and a periderm resembling those found on common hardwoods. From the photograph alone, it was clear that this 3-meter-tall organism was capable of committing the violence recently endured. Forceful in its demeanor, aggressive in its presence, and territorial in its perception, the photograph of SCP-4608-1 led to an even bigger question. Is this plant-like creature grown by nature or sown by man? After extensive research by the Foundation, records were retrieved that indicate the entirety of the 60-acre land was sown into life by John Chapman in 1826. Chapman was the type of man you could mistake for a scarecrow, both for reasons of preferred garb and body language. He was treated as such too. His personal space was respected, maybe too much. He spent his life alone, only accompanied and comforted by the things he planted. He maintained these acres all by himself until his eventual death in 1845. And it's then that it's believed SCP-4608 became unstable, reassigning its objective from comfort to chaos. When the newspaper came out the next Sunday, John Chapman's obituary painted him as a priest of the Allen County Church. But was this just the art of illusion? For as far as we know, no records of a chapel or congregation exist. A quiet choir, indeed. Come to think of it, it seems that everything within this 60-acre orchard was destined to be silenced one way or another, by violent force or even by conscious decision-making. See, while the SCP Foundation has had a long track record of subduing anomalies by methods of capture and containment, not all things are suited for locks and chains. SCP-4608 is better covered with a story than a tarp. A fruitless field that once produced at an unmanageable pace is now rendered incapable of supporting growth. Most will think it's due to a toxic spill. In truth, the spill wasn't that of chemicals on soil, but rather corpses on crops. A week after receiving the photograph of 4608-1, Site-81 sent a 3-man investigation team into Milan. Their adventure was equally abrupt, a story with no reportable beginning or middle, but simply a predictable end. After 4 days of no communication, the Foundation presumed the 3 agents no different than their steak dinner, dead meat. And only then, after the Foundation's failure to solve the case, was it understood that what we were to be looking for wasn't people at all, but rather answers to more nebulous questions. What's really happening here? And why is this happening? Following the loss of communication with the investigation team, Site-81 dispatched a high-risk response team, Mobile Strike Force Bravo 7, aka Hometown Heroes. These men had all the makings of heroes, and they were determined to prove themselves worthy of the title. While the Alpha Squad moved north towards the incident site, Beta Squad headed east, and Gamma Squad hurried west. The crews covering all directions of the compass but south, a coincidentally symbolic gesture, as if to say, we will not be taken down. The mission was simple in theory, find out what happened to the previous team and why. But alas, missions never are as easy as their objective statement reads. In practice, some might even call them impossible. As Alpha neared the incident site, they noticed the shadows on the ground beneath them did not resemble the shape of the leaves in the canopy above. They heard small drops of liquid tap, tap, tap on their helmets. Yet, it wasn't raining, was it? Alpha 1 ran his finger across the top of his helmet and then examined the residue left on his skin. It was raining, just not water. Oh, God! Upon looking up, he witnessed the reasons for both irregularities. Bodies hung from branches by their intestines, casting shadow puppets with their lifeless limbs. Blood dripped down like a leaky faucet. What did this? But before he could even ponder the answer, he heard a loud shriek from his radio, so loud that the radio itself vibrated, shaking its way loose from his hand and falling to the dirt. He bent down and picked it up, and this time gripped tighter, as if to tell whoever was responsible for that noise that they will not get away that easily. He and his crew followed this sound like a game of Marco Polo, blind to what may be ahead. They extended their guns and pointed them into the distant tree line, like zombie arms reaching outward in the pool towards the resonance of polo, a small comfort in a giant game of distress. As they pressed forward, Alpha Squad proceeded past all signs that pointed them back, stepping over dead bodies like puddles on a rainy day. Soon they found themselves crouching down next to human remains, attending brief and hurried funerals for all their closest comrades, torn between staying to pay respect and marching along to earn it. The chest cavities of the fallen had been ripped open and filled with apples, a grim foresight into what they were up against. But nothing they could have ever imagined would prepare them for what they were about to see, and they wouldn't have to wait long. Another loud shriek from Alpha 1's radio. It shot free from his grip and landed again in the dirt.
Dude, this guy's got butterfingers. The fuck you mean it dropped out of his grip again?
Quickly picking up the radio and shrugging it off, as if the 5-second rule applied equally to communication systems as candy bars. They pressed forward, maybe out of bravery, maybe out of shame of going back. And while moving through the trees, they began to notice something alarming etched on their bark. What was it? There were unnaturally deep grooves on the base of almost every one of the trees. But what exactly were they from? Scratches from an animal or beast? Infection? Decay? Their eyes drew closer, but proximity brought them no clarity. These sigils and symbols could be dated back to occult Norse religion, but in that moment, they were incomprehensible to the men. Yet the message, even if misinterpreted, was very clear. Beware. Another shrieking cry over the radio. The bullets aren't... They're not working! They can't penetrate the bark! The grass is no greener over on the east side of the orchard, where Beta Squad gets lunged at by an SCP-4608-1. Their defenses are futile, but they fight nonetheless, sending rounds to the attacker's chest, leading to nothing. If SCP-4608 had a health meter, it wouldn't have budged in the slightest. Understanding the negligible impact of their efforts and assessing their injuries, Beta Squad scurries to retreat to an abandoned chapel, taking a brief refuge from war only later to be named. Quickly, they barricade the door. In the chapel, Beta 9 tends to Beta 6's wounds, who is in the worst shape of them all, cut, bloody, and beaten. As he lays there grimacing, he shines his flashlight up and down the chapel's walls until he finds a reason to stop and holds it steady. Illuminated is an assortment of human skulls, and if this wasn't traumatic enough, he then spotted apple seeds embedded in Beta 6's wounds. Apple seeds that were starting to sprout. Beta 9 gave it to him straight. "This is gonna hurt." He drew his knife from his belt and lowered it into his comrade's wounds. Beta 9 dug into flesh and bone, picking the seeds out one by one. Beta 6's scream shook the chapel's stained glass windows. As Beta 1 stood guard, he saw a blur rip past him, as if life had suddenly been turned up to 3 times speed. He spun around in a circle to try and keep his eyes on it, but as his vision refocused, he saw Beta 9 was now dead. He then shifted his gaze to Beta 6, who was looking less and less human by the second. Branches began sprouting out of his body like an all-consuming magic beanstalk, out of his chest, out of his eyes, out of his mouth. And when there were no more orifices to exit, his body exploded, making way for the new form that had overtaken him. The barrage of branches broke through the windows. Only 2 of them were lucky to be on the outskirts of inertia. Outside, Gamma 1 was on his knees thanking his dead comrade for the grenade he stole from his back pocket. "I could always count on you to have my back, even in death." One hand holding a grenade and the other on his radio, Gamma 1 called off Alpha 7. "Alpha 7, request for backup rescinded. Go grab a burger. I'll take it from here." Gamma 1 slowly glanced up and locked eyes with SCP-4608-2, a large apple tree with 13 human faces embedded into it, a perennial plant with great powers, a gymnosperm that had found a voice. Blood poured from SCP-4608-2's empty eye sockets. Gamma 1 smirks. "Get some eye drops, sicko." He crawled over to the beast. The faces began yelling at him in indescribable tongues. "Let me refer you to a speech therapist," he jokes as he pulls the pin of the grenade and throws it towards the largest of the 13 mouths. SCP-4608-2 chokes on the grenade, forcing it to inhale deeply, the strength of its lungs pulling Gamma 1 toward it and sucking him in. The grenade goes off. SCP-4608-2 explodes. The surrounding trees scream and combust. The orchard goes up in flames. The bodies of the fallen are given an appropriate cremation. Gamma 1's radio lays face up in the dirt. A voice rattles it awake. It's Alpha 7. "Gamma 1! Gamma 1, are you there? Can you hear me? Please, please, it's Alpha 7. Please. Gamma 1?" On October 16th, 1947, Gamma 1 was recovered by the Allen County Fire Department, unconscious and suffering from exhaustion and smoke inhalation. The Site-81 concealment team took control of the situation and quarantined the area using the cover story of a toxic chemical hazard. The members of MTF Bravo 7 were posthumously awarded the Foundation Star for their efforts during the neutralization of SCP-4608. And so the one question that remains is, how? How did SCP-4608-1 become so dangerous? And how did its danger slip by for so many years? Is its volatility by nature, design, or consequence? Could it be that the Foundation failed to understand the complexity of this creation? During Chapman's lifetime, there were no accidents or fatalities coming from SCP-4608. Yet, there is no reason to believe that SCP-4608-1 wasn't always capable of harm. Maybe it always was capable of mass murders, but simply had no reason to kill. What if the logging company never stepped foot on that land, never brought out their sharp blades and heavy machinery? What if this perilous orchard was in fact docile but provoked? What if the proverbial tree only falls in the woods when we force our philosophy on it? Though SCP-4608-2 spoke in unidentifiable sounds, the noises were always recognized and recorded as language. It spoke with intent, even if misunderstood. What it screamed is still unclear. Were they pleas for help, or messages of hate? And would one even be worse than the other? John Chapman might argue when facing heavy machinery and trained artillery, would raising your voice even be a moral decision at all? Is fight or flight imbued not just in blood, but also in bark? Let's ask a philosophical question. What is it that makes up a person?
Alright, so again, I asked the question that I asked before while listening to this. What's the point in keeping the orchard around? Why don't we just napalm it? You could very easily say it's just crop rotations, because that's the thing. You burn crops down to get the nutrients back in the soil. So why don't they just fucking bomb the Because it's fun? Because the killer orchard with the silly apples that kill people is fun? What do? Do they send kids in there and go, hee hee, hee hee? If you can get out of here, little Jimmy, we'll get you that toy. We'll get you the toy you want if you can get out of this little maze. Do you not like fun? Arson? Is it arson when you're doing it to stop evil apples? It served no purpose. They never once said, yeah, we make like the cure to cancer out of these apples. We can't get rid of it. That would make sense. No, there was no reference to like a good thing it does. That our orchard just kills people. Oh my god. Oh my god. Whatever. SCP-158. So I would love to have that orchard. We'll teach neighbors a lesson or two. SCP-158, the soul extractor. Probably going to be like, oh, we keep it around because it's silly. We put insubordinate SCP workers in there and suck the souls out their bodies. That's exactly what it's going to say.
Is it their personality, their memories,
exactly what it's gonna fucking
their
say.
emotions, the history of their good and bad deeds? Is it an energy that inhabits a living body, an active consciousness, or even all of the above? Or is the soul just an entirely nebulous and undefinable concept? The idea of the soul is almost as old as human civilization itself, with philosophers from as far back as ancient Greece and even before acknowledging its existence. Numerous religions from all over the world, if not all of them, also hold teachings about the nature of souls, even though they might vary. For example, Judaism and some denominations of Christianity state that only human beings have an immortal soul that will live on in heaven after a person's death,
Like my sister's
and
ex
the end
to
of
that
their
orchard.
time on Earth. Meanwhile, certain Catholic theologians, meaning people
Does the
who
orchard have a
study
soul?
religion, claim that a soul inhabits all living creatures. And so the philosophical and theological debate goes on, with the general consensus being that souls are, well, they're a little bit of everything. Every part of someone that makes them who they are. Character, emotions, reasoning, consciousness, memories, and thoughts all blended together. But if we accept that a soul is something that exists, then it is something that can be altered. Is it constant, or can it be manipulated? Could a person's soul even be removed entirely? At first glance, SCP-158 appears to be a device resembling a mechanical arm. In fact, it's a lot like the kind of machine you might expect to find inside a huge factory, standing as part of an assembly line, welding and drilling components together day in and day out. This particular mechanized arm, however, features a number of unique and bizarre differences from any currently used in automated production. For starters, it has an unusual attachment at one end, a three-pronged tridactyl-like claw. The arm itself is also designed to be suspended from the ceiling, ideally hanging upside down in a room big enough to accommodate it. There is a long series of winding cables connecting SCP-158 to a complicated computer console that is used to control the device, while the remaining cables are intended to be connected to a power source. As for the console, it possesses a visual display unit and a keyboard like you might expect it to. And at the bottom, there is what appears to be some form of a dispenser, seemingly designed to attach to a container of some kind, measuring 3 inches wide by 7 inches tall. The ideal receptacle to fit the attachment is that of a glass jar or beaker. This mechanical arm was first uncovered by the Foundation in late 2007, inside a burned-down hospital in an unknown location that has been redacted from the SCP-158 file. The hospital itself was derelict, abandoned, and appeared to have been unused for a considerable period of time, approximately 5 years, but perhaps more. Agents working for the Foundation recovered
We don't know how long, but we know how long.
SCP-158, along with an owner's manual that presumably would have contained detailed instructions describing the device's function and exactly how to operate it. This manual had been badly damaged by the fire, but the readable portions of it were later transcribed and copied, and now a single copy of what was left of the manual is kept with SCP-158 at all times. While most instructions detailing the operation of SCP-158 did survive and were able to be copied, any chapters that might have explained who built it or what it actually did were too badly damaged to read, lost to the fire. Much like the owner's manual, all components of SCP-158, the arm, the console, and the cables have all appeared to sustain some amount of fire damage, but remain intact and in full working order. The damage is only cosmetic, and while it might take around 20 minutes to boot up, this fire damage doesn't affect the machine's function. But the question still remains: what exactly is the intended purpose of this mechanical arm? Well, through a long process of trial and error, and following the surviving portions of the manual, the Foundation was able to get the device working again. They learned that SCP-158 will only perform its function when presented with an ordinary living being. While human beings, namely members of D-Class personnel, are typically used as test subjects by the Foundation, this actually applies to any living creature that has the ability to display cognition, which is the mental process of gaining knowledge in order to perform cognitive functions like thinking, remembering, and problem solving. When a person or non-human being possessing cognition is presented to SCP-158, the machine will then go to work and extract an unknown gas-based substance from them. This substance is then deposited in the jar or beaker that is then fitted to the dispenser beneath the console. So, what does it take? Is it some sort of advanced form of decontamination device, removing all toxins and impurities from the body?
No, 'cause it'd be
if
useful.
only that were true. Sadly, you see, the Foundation didn't give SCP-158 the nickname of the Soul Extractor for nothing. After the machine has performed its function, the now formerly cognitive organism on the receiving end will display a complete and total loss of their higher brain functions. They won't be able to speak, form coherent thoughts, or even remember who they were before SCP-158 was switched on. The device will rob them of any and all parts of themselves, essentially leaving the person or creature as a hollowed-out shell, a husk of their previous self, a body without a soul. Perhaps even crueler, though, is that this extraction process is not fatal, and victims are left alive afterward. They no longer possess their capability for cognitive thought, and will not respond to any form of external stimuli around them. There have been some level of brainstem activity recorded in most cases, and subjects have been known to exhibit basic reflexes, but this is the only active movement they are now capable of. As for that substance that test subjects have removed from their bodies, well, it takes the form of a gas, as we mentioned earlier, but it also seems to be comprised of a mixture of kinetic, electrical, heat, and light energy. In fact, each jar of the substance is an infinite source of these various types of energy, albeit only capable of a very low rate and output on average. The general consensus among Foundation researchers is that this substance is the physical soul that has been removed from a subject. So, do they stay stuck as soulless shells forever? Actually,
Probably.
SCP-158 is in fact capable of returning the extracted substance to a subject that it performed a removal on. However, whether a test subject, normally a member of D-Class, receives their soul after having it extracted is all down to whatever test is being conducted by the Foundation. Those that do get given their souls back will usually regain access to all of their previously lost cognition and higher brain functions, but the rate at which they can return can vary depending on the subject. Replacing the substance from one patient with that of another can also cause these results to differ. And again, that's if the SCP Foundation even bothers to replace a test subject's soul, instead of just leaving them hollowed out. It's actually pretty terrifying to think that the Foundation has the freedom and the capability to do that to somebody, taking away everything that makes someone a human being, only to leave their soul in a jar while their vacant body lives on without thought or consciousness. It was due to the unique anomalous function of SCP-158 that the device was proposed to become a part of a Foundation research endeavor, codenamed the Olympia Project, and overseen by its head researcher, Professor Kane Pathos Crow, who has the head of a golden retriever, but that's a story for another day.
What?
The
What?
ultimate aim
No,
of
no,
the
no,
project
no,
was
no.
to
You
use
can't.
the
You
anomalous
can't just drop.
properties of
Hold
a
on.
number of
No, full stop. You can't drop. You can't drop on top of us. Yeah. This guy is the head of a dog, and then not explain what do you mean by he has a head of a dog.
SCPs to successfully create an artificial human that would become a potential asset of the SCP Foundation. As part of one series of Olympia Project experiments, Professor Crow gathered a group of D-Class personnel to undergo testing using SCP-158. Each of these individuals had been interviewed by Crow himself and were selected based on personality traits and characteristics that the professor liked or thought would be useful to have in the Foundation's artificial humanoid. The group chosen by Professor Crow featured a mix of male and female test subjects, as Crow believed a soul transcends the flesh it is interred in. The main purpose of the experiment was to try and uncover some of the further functions of SCP-158, basically pushing the machine to its limit, trying to learn more information about the device that would have been contained in the damaged portions of the owner's manual. Professor Crow had pored over the sections that had survived intact, making sure he knew every available piece of information on SCP-158 inside and out. The obscured instructions he was able to decipher were, according to his notes, sketchy at best and downright unhelpful at worst. Crow began his experiments by removing the first subject's soul and then trying to use the device to do literally anything else with the extracted substance. Despite trying everything he could think of, the professor learned that there was little the soul extractor could do with the soul once it had been removed, other than reverse the process and return the substance to the body it had been taken from. By then repeating this with further D-class test subjects, Crow was able to learn the exact input sequence needed to reverse the soul extraction, whilst before this had only been ever achieved through blind luck. By his sixth experiment with SCP-158, Professor Crow noticed that there was a brief period in the middle of performing its function that the device would pause as if awaiting further commands. Crow theorized that this pause was there for additional sequences to be inputted via the machine's console. He then began removing and re-implanting the same soul into the following test subject, both to practice but also to experiment with the soul extractor's controls. The professor found it strange that, despite what he was doing to her, the D-Class suffered little to no side effects to her health, even though her soul was being continuously removed and replaced. Then, on experiment number 11, Crow seemed to crack that little pause SCP-158 took during each operation. A new list of commands appeared on the monitor like split, merge, remove aspects, add aspects, and combine aspects. It seemed to the professor that the device could be used to not only remove souls, but alter them. Through his further experiments, Crow learned that the aspects the machine mentioned were elements of a person's personality, such as willpower, understanding, conscience, creativity, empathy, and the soul extractor could be used to manipulate and rewrite a person's entire identity before placing it back into their body. However, this took a considerable amount of testing, causing Professor Crow to grow more and more frustrated with the complex workings of the device. That was until he eventually realized it wasn't SCP-158 that was too complicated for its own good. The machine was trying to quantify the unquantifiable, explain something inexplicable, the very nature of the human soul. Professor Crow began using SCP-158 to modify a composite soul, which he referred to as Subject Zero. While working on it, he realized the soul itself seemed to be aware of its surroundings, possessing a level of knowledge above that of most Foundation researchers, including Crow himself. Either by fluke or by meddling with SCP-158, the professor had created a soul that seemed to exist on several planes of existence beyond the physical world that we know. Subject Zero had become a sentient, disembodied consciousness, an entity that could see, hear, feel, and think without the need for a physical form or body to house it. Zero was proposed to become Professor Crow's assistant, given that it displayed respect and admiration to him for having created it, almost like a child looking up to a father figure. All it asked in return was to be given a name other than Subject Zero. Crow told the disembodied entity it could name itself whatever it liked. The Foundation then planned for the composite soul, now formally known as Subject Zero, to be a component of the Olympia Project's artificial humanoid, whenever its creation was successfully completed. Don't you just love a happy ending? Everybody remembered where they were, what they had been doing.
This one I liked. Still silly. But my biggest question, what did the soul take as its name? I think Gerald. I think Gerald's a good one. I think I'm gonna refer to him as Gerald. No matter what they say, if he shows up again, his name's Gerald. I think it's good. Next one. SCP-106 gets too close for comfort. It's a long one, dude. This is a fucking 9-minute one. Oh, this is a 12 one. This stuff hurts my brain. It's good stuff just to listen to, especially when you're like writing and all that. Just hear and it get your brain to think for a second. But I gotta say, this entire company, god awful. They run to the ground.
The Foundation revealed themselves to the world. It was an event that had so fundamentally changed the lives of every person on Earth that it became pretty hard to forget that momentous, horrible day, even though for most people, it had begun as a day like most others. Dane Moss had been at home when it started.
Oh, it's one of
His
those
roommates were
stories.
talking about buying an air hockey table for their place.
One of the story ones. Cockland time.
Dimension might just have been worse. Picture this. You're out driving, visiting the more rural towns of your home country.
Okay.
It's been a long trip, hours at a time or sometimes full days spent on the open road, with brief stops taken only for gas and snacks. Every time you hit the next town, you stop for the night, maybe book a day or two at a local hotel to rest. Then you're right back out on the road again. It's been a little while since you left the last town, and it's starting to get late. The sun is dipping behind the horizon, and pretty soon it'll be night again. You don't think it's a good idea to keep driving all through the night until tomorrow. You need to sleep. The one problem is, you don't know the highway you're on all that well, and the people at the last town didn't mention there being anywhere else to stay for at least a few more miles. But then you turn on the radio, accidentally tuning into some kind of locally produced tourism ad. Through the airwaves and the ever-growing evening darkness, you hear, "Welcome to Chalkland, a nice rural town with a population who just can't bear to leave. Located just off the freeway, you'll find our town is filled with all sorts of colorful folks who love nothing more than to greet new faces. From the moment you arrive, you'll see firsthand the Chalkland locals' love for art and expression. And we even encourage our younger residents to get in on the fun and let their creative flair show. Chalkland, once you're here, you just won't be able to leave."
Yeah, no,
Chalkland?
I'm driving
You've
past
never
the
heard of the
Hookers.
place.
Not
It
going there.
wasn't on any of the maps when you planned out your route, and it doesn't even show up on your car's GPS. And what's more, the people at the last town you visited never said anything about it. They said the nearest neighboring city was much, much further away. Did they lie? Why wouldn't they tell you that this other town was closer? You spot a road sign up ahead,
Radio man's
pointing
voice
towards
is
the
ugly.
turn for Chalkland,
I think it was
and
endearing. I think
decide
he's
to
a good
try
old
your
country boy. He's gonna
chances. A
eat
good
my
night's
skin.
rest and you'll be back on the road.
What was gonna
Or
happen?
so you think. In any small town, there are bound to be secrets. Local legends, ghost stories, even grudges between families that have lived there for generations. No matter how friendly and unassuming a place might seem on the surface, there's always bound to be something that people just don't talk about. The township of Chalkland, otherwise known as SCP-277, is no exception, hiding a fair few secrets of its own. Although the locals don't know it, they are living their seemingly ordinary lives under constant surveillance. Operatives of the SCP Foundation have been integrated among the townsfolk, embedded within the civilian population to monitor some of the strange happenings going on in this otherwise normal town. So why not take a walk with us through Main Street, down the avenues of Chalkland, as we draw your attention to some of the mysteries of SCP-277. The first thing you'll probably notice as you stroll around town are all the chalk drawings. They're everywhere, on the sidewalks and the outer walls of buildings, scribbled on trash cans and houses. Practically every playground in town has been turned into an urban art installation for these colorful children's drawings. Not at all that weird at first glance, right? Perhaps it's a good thing that the town encourages its kids to express themselves by having them draw all over the town with chalk. But these images coating the town, on every street corner and alleyway, they weren't drawn with chalk. These apparitions found throughout the area of SCP-277 might look like harmless art, but not one of them was created in the way you might expect. Little Timmy didn't spend a few minutes on his hands and knees dragging a lump of chalk over the concrete. Oh no. The drawings found around Chalkland seem to be projected directly from the minds of the town's children. All their thoughts, their wild and unfiltered imaginations have somehow been plastered all over every surface you can find. The Foundation calls these images instances of SCP-277-1, with almost all of them appearing as figures drawn in white outlines. Creepy, isn't it? Like part of a crime scene. Luckily, some of these projections take the form of beanstalks, spaceships, anything from the imagination of the child manifesting them. An instance of SCP-277-1 doesn't possess any physical form, or any substantial three-dimensional body, and the size, shape, and style and complexity of each drawing varies, all depending on the child that creates them. Additionally, it's only children that have the capacity to produce these images. Anyone over the age of pubescence is completely unable to do so. As for how exactly the children of Chalkland create SCP-277-1 instances, well, most of the time they aren't even aware that they're projecting their thoughts into the form of these anomalous drawings. It is an entirely unconscious and involuntary process. It's hard for the SCP Foundation to put an exact number on the number of children in Chalkland, given the sheer size of the town and its population. So, predicting the exact number of active instances of SCP-277-1s at any one time is pretty tricky, if not downright unfeasible. The Foundation agents embedded among the townsfolk have been able to confirm that these drawings or projections are capable of interacting with fellow SCP-277-1 instances, while physical objects can pass through them without causing or sustaining any form of damage. It is due to this factor that the children living in SCP-277 can often be seen playing with their chalk projections, and the existence of these living drawings is viewed as a totally normal and everyday occurrence by the adult residents of Chalkland. In fact, you can ask anyone who grew up living in SCP-277, any lifelong local born and raised in Chalkland, and they will tell you that the living chalk projections of the town's children have existed as long as the town itself has. According to the claims of the older residents, SCP-277-1 instances have been appearing in Chalkland for years and years, dating all the way back to when SCP-277 was first colonized and the earliest settlers arrived in the town. However, the Foundation isn't so sure that these claims are 100% accurate. For one, they can't even find a single record of SCP-277 existing before the 2000s. Even those living in neighboring towns refuse to believe that Chalkland is a real place that exists. Adding to the mystery surrounding the town of SCP-277 is the fact that all of its inhabitants also don't seem to exist, or at least have no official record of their existence anywhere else. According to tests conducted by the Foundation, the dental, DNA, and fingerprint data of everyone living in SCP-277 don't match any recorded persons on national population databases. And on top of that, none of the Chalkland residents have any memories of living anywhere else other than the mysterious town, or ever having traveled anywhere outside it either. No vacations, road trips, not even as much as a visit to relatives in the next town over. Naturally, before they implanted covert agents among the locals, the SCP Foundation's initial attempt to contain SCP-277 was to evacuate the civilian population. The plan was to remove the people from the vicinity of the town, relocate them, and then assess the local area's anomalous properties. What was it about that specific town that caused the chalk projections to manifest? Why were none of the residents' details anywhere on the national databases? And how could a single one of them never have once left the confines of Chalkland? Evacuate and assess, that was the goal. But naturally, things weren't as simple in practice. Multiple failed evacuation attempts were made, with some unforeseen incidences causing the operation to go awry. In an attempt to combat this, the SCP Foundation tried to vary the specific details of its evacuation strategy each time, but even then they couldn't get the people out of the town. What was perhaps far stranger was that every time the Foundation attempted a new evacuation, the civilians living in SCP-277 denied having any memories of the earlier failed evacuations. There was so much disbelief in the occurrence of these prior evacuation attempts that it caused the Foundation to question if these attempts even took place. The only record of the failed evacuations existing were in their own files. On the odd occasion that Foundation operatives were able to get 1 or 2 residents of SCP-277 far enough away from the town, they learned it was an exercise in futility. After spending any longer than a few brief minutes outside the borders of Chalkland, a resident would suffer some sort of violent incident. The exact nature of what would happen to them has been redacted. However, we know for a fact that they weren't killed just by leaving the town. Shortly after, these evacuated civilians would be found back within SCP-277, with no memory of ever having left the town. But what was causing all of these attempted evacuations to fail? What exactly was preventing the townsfolk from leaving? Well, the answers to these questions may be found in a unique instance of SCP-277-1, which are far more actively hostile versions of the chalk drawings that were collectively given the designation SCP-277-1-R. These instances first came about sometime before the Foundation started attempting to evacuate Chalkland. One of their agents, undercover within the town and monitoring anomalous activity, spotted a seemingly standard SCP-277-1 projection in the shape of a rabbit. It wasn't a drawing that had been noticed previously, so it wasn't present in any reports coming out of SCP-277. But yet, there it was, at the local library. None of the town's children admitted to being responsible for casting this new projection. Unusual, but not uncommon. After all, they are kids. Think about it. We're sure that as a kid you might have done something that you didn't fess up to when a grown-up asked you. Granted, you probably never cast a psychic projection onto a library, though. The Foundation agents within SCP-277 knew that the instances of the chalk drawings could often be good indicators of the psychological state of the child that manifested them. So they aimed to keep an eye out for any further SCP-277-1-R rabbits with a matching drawing style. Turns out the agents found plenty more of these rabbits. Before long, sightings of SCP-277-1-R instances had tripled in frequency since that first one appeared at the library. But what was it that made these projections different from the regular SCP-277-1 chalk drawings? Well, Agent Davis of the SCP Foundation witnessed a cluster of these rabbit projections across the street from a diner. They were silently watching people or cars that passed by at a nearby intersection. The rabbits didn't play like the other sketches. Suddenly, the agent heard a scream from a little girl. She had been playing with her own chalk drawings that took the shape of a pony with wings. Agent Davis turned around to see one of the rabbits attacking the little girl's sketch, practically consuming the drawing thanks to instances of SCP-277-1 being able to interact with each other. At the same time, the attack seemed to cause the little girl to suffer some form of seizure. All around, the rest of the rabbits were doing the same, seeking out other chalk drawings and devouring them, tearing them apart and causing the children that created their own SCP-277-1s to suffer the same seizure. Ultimately, any child who had their projection attacked by a rabbit collapsed soon after and slipped into a coma, with attempts to awaken them proving unsuccessful.
Rabbits
3 months later,
causing
all of
kids
the rabbit
comas.
drawings seemed to have vanished, with no clue if they had come from a child or were created from the town of SCP-277 itself. The local civilians gave mixed responses when asked, some claiming to have no memory of the event that put multiple children into comas. Meanwhile, other townsfolk simply stated that this sort of thing happens in Chalkland every few years. SCP Foundation staff noticed that the residents of SCP-277 seemed to smile too wide when they explained this, as if their town was a fairy tale, and that the massacre was just a part of a happy ending. Still, if you're thinking of stopping at Chalkland, maybe it's safer to just keep driving. For more...
So, Chalkland's cool. I like Chalkland. I think it's interesting. Chat, what do you guys think about this so far? This art, about this little drawing I've done. What are you guys' thoughts? Hello, viewers. Ernest Hyde and Stop. Please contact me on Kick. No. No. You're very lucky I have to open another screen to ban you, dude. Do not advertise in any of my chats. Oh wait, no, I can ban you here. Goodbye. First kick ban. Bye-bye. All right, so let's break this down because I'm getting off in a minute because I gotta go and actually get started on my stuff. But let's break this down. Let's see what I need to do better. Let's see. I think Stummy. Let me do this. I think Stummy right here. Stummy needs to be better. Eyes are fucked up. Leggy still. I need to figure out Leggy's a bit better. I also need to stop hiding hands. Yeah. Alrighty. Well, thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for all showing up. Thank you for listening to the SCP stuff with me. Sorry half it was stupid as shit. But I appreciate everyone, and I hope you all had a good time. If you guys liked or enjoyed the content, please subscribe, follow, whatever. And come back next time. We're going to just be chilling, do some other stuff another time. But thank you all, and I hope you all have a good day.